Hi, this is Lainey Cameron. I am so excited today. I'm here with Patricia Sands, who, in addition to being one of my favorite authors, and I think it's the travel connection, I love how Patricia writes about France and just transports you. But in addition to her being an award winning author who also is one of my favorites, she and I are co hosts on the Blue Sky Book Chat Facebook group where we get to interact with readers together. So this is especially fun for me to have Patricia here with me.
Hi, Lainey, and it's especially fun for me to be here with you too. I've watched so many of your author interviews, and you really do a great job. So I'm delighted that you invited me to join you.
Yay. And we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about your newest re-release, which is the Bridge Club, and we'll talk about why it's a re-release, what that means.
Yep.
But also I want to talk about your books overall. So where are you? You're up in Canada somewhere. Where are you joining me from?
Yep, right. Joining you from 2 hours north of Toronto in an area called the Blue Mountains. The town we're in is actually Collingwood. And we are right on Georgian Bay. As I sit here and look out the window, all I can see is the water of Georgian Bay and the snow along the shore.
Let's start with talking about the Bridge Club re-release, which I love this.
Sure.
It's a story of friendship. It's a story of 8 women, right? There's 8 women in this book, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about the book to start with, and then we'll look at a quick review.
Well, I published the book 10 years ago. Well, it'll be 11 this summer, but 10 years ago. And it was the beginning of my life as an author. I had never expected or thought about writing books before. The book is based on my real life bridge club. And we had joked for many, many years that, somebody should write a book about it, ha, ha, ha. And then as various friends read bits and pieces, they would say, well, you should think about publishing this because you're telling women's stories. And it's a book that my book club would like to read. So then I thought, okay, well, so I started investigating, how do you go about writing a book? I took a lot of writing workshops and courses online, and I really got into it. And the next thing I knew, I was finishing up my draft and sending it off to be edited and querying publishers and literary agents and realizing that, a 65-year-old first-time author wasn't really high on anybody's wish list. So it was around the time that the world was changing with regard to self-published books. And so I just happened coincidentally to read an interview with Lisa Genova, she had just published Still Alice at that time. And she talked about how she couldn't get her manuscript picked up by anyone. And so she went with a particular company to publish her first book. And at the same time, I read an interview with a Canadian author by the name of Terry Fallis, who's very beloved in Canada. And he had gone through a similar situation where nobody wanted his first manuscript. And so he self-published through the same company as Lisa. So I thought, well, if they both used that company, then I'm going to use that company too, because they must have done their homework. And so I did, and I had a good experience with them, a really good editing experience with them. They wanted me to change the ending of the book, which, as you know, has something occur that is a bit of a crisis, and certainly was in those days. And I guess I can talk about the ending, right? Doesn't matter.
Well, I think we have people who haven't read the book yet, so no spoilers. I think my rule is no spoilers. We'll just say that it's got a surprise, interesting ending.
Interesting experience deciding to write that last chapter, because after I finished the first 8 chapters of the 8 different characters, I thought, okay, something's got to happen at the end. You can't just publish a book about 8 women, It's got to be a reason why you needed to get to know these women and their friendship. And then something happened to someone I know up here, and that situation had a very dramatic impact on me, and I knew that's the topic I wanted to include. But then I couldn't decide who this situation was going to happen to, because all these women were women I knew and loved.
Great. You were in love with your characters.
Yeah. What if I choose one and then something really happens? Because they were based on real characters of my bridge club. And so then I woke up one morning and thought, I don't have to say who it is. I can write it in the third person, the last chapter, and not divulge the identity. So that's what I did.
Let's take a look at one review here from Rochelle Weinstein, which is just a beautiful review of this book that you're re-releasing 10 years in. And I love how she says, your expert storytelling weaves the lives and loves of 8 women, capturing life's greatest challenges with honesty and courage. And I love how she captures some of my favorite words, sisterhood, and the power that comes with that sisterhood. And let's take a look at one more thing, because folks may not realize that you have so many books out there right now. And my biggest question for you, because I read my way through the Provence series before I made my way to the Bridge Club, which won multiple awards after you brought it out. But I think my big question for you is, how do you keep finding inspiration after so many books? Look at all those books in just 10 years. Like, where do you get your ideas from?
Well, I'll tell you, after the Bridge Club, which I, of course, as I say, I didn't really intend to publish, and then I did. And then I started getting emails from readers saying, well, what else have you written? And I was like, oh, nothing. And but I had then gotten involved with social media and meeting other authors, and the wonderful collegiality of the community of authors everywhere in the world. It's really amazing, and you learn so much from each other, and more experienced authors are so supportive. And so people were encouraging me to write something else. And my husband and I, this is my second husband, we'll have been married for 25 years this year. He said, look, we've both had a lot of sadness in our lives, so let's make sure that, we do what we want to do. And so one thing that we shared mutually was a love of travel. So we started going to the south of France the first time because we had good friends who had a place in the south of France. And we were talking to them one day, and they said, hey, you want to switch for a month? We'd like to come back to Toronto, and why don't you come and stay at our place? So we did. And it was really fun. We just loved being settled there and living like a local. And that was the beginning of us doing 17 home exchanges. So I realized that I wanted to write a book set in that part of the world. And so that was where The Promise of Provence came from.
And I think that's the first of your books that I read. Yeah. And I just love that it absorbs you in Provence. I feel like I'm drinking the wine, I'm eating the food, I'm smelling the lavender. It's a wonderful book that takes you away. That's what I love about that book.
Well, that's what I hope when I write these books. And although I always sort of caution the reader that you don't get to Provence for a while in this book, there's quite a bit that happens at the beginning in Toronto before Catherine ever gets to Provence. But anyway, I thought this was going to be a standalone. That's why it's long. And after it was published, then I heard from more readers saying, so what happened? Like, did she stay? Did she go? We need to know more. And then my author friends were saying, okay, turn it into a series. So I wrote the second book. And it was after I wrote the second book that I opened my emails one morning. There was a message saying, hello, Patricia. I'm a senior acquisitions editor with Amazon's Lake Union Publishing. And I've just read some of your work, and I'd like to talk to you. I was like, you gotta be kidding. After I read the message about 15 times, I called my husband and said, come here, read this. What do you think? And he said, oh, I think it's the real deal.
What advice do you have for writers who are maybe earlier in the journey? I mean, I love that you first went with a publishing company, kind of self-published, and then ended up at Lake Union. Like, what advice do you, and I had a somewhat similar journey in that I didn't find an agent. I came out with a small publisher. So like, what advice do you give to people who are kind of back where you were as they're thinking about where to go or how to write the right thing? Or like, what do you tell people earlier in their career?
Well, first of all, and I really, don't you love it? I'm sure you're finding this now too, because, you are an experienced author. You've got that big bestseller out there, that people do write to you with questions about. So the first thing I always say is to don't stop believing in your dream. And I get this from Stephen King. Every writing workshop that I took, his book on writing, a memoir of the craft.
Funnily, it's actually sitting on my desk right now.
Okay. Well, you know what? There were many things, but the one thing that really jumped out at me was where he said, if you feel so strongly that you have a story to tell, sit down and tell it. And you don't have to take courses. You don't have to worry about your grammar or anything. Just write that story. And somewhere along the line, you will find your voice as your story is getting out there. And then when you think you have your story completed, then you find a good editor. And that's where the magic starts to happen. I think if I hadn't read that, I might not have carried on with the Bridge Club, because I kept thinking, who am I? Like, what? How could I presume that I'm going to write a book that's going to be published and people will want to read?
And a multi-award winner once it was out there. I think it won like 3 different awards.
It did win a few awards, yeah, which was really, encouraging.
Last question is, anything you've enjoyed reading recently?
Oh my gosh. This is one of the things about COVID. It's given me, and I know a lot of other people, so much more time to read. And I read everything on my phone. I'm a digital reader. I love having my entire library on my phone with me at all times. Oh, I've read so many good books. They've all been some of them have been so much fun, and some of them have been so intriguing. But I'll say Under the Gilded Moon, I absolutely loved. Her writing is exquisite. And I have read a number of thrillers. Young Toronto author Samantha Bailey had a great book, Women on the Edge.
Oh, I love that book. That book is so well written. Yeah.
Right now, I'm reading Jennifer Robson, another Toronto author. I'm reading her latest, just published a week or so ago, World War II historical fiction, Our Darkest Night, set in Italy. And it's so good. But she's a lovely writer. I enjoy all of her work. So I'm a big historical fiction fan. But I also like books that make me laugh. And Julie Valerie's last two, were very funny. Of course, I read a lot of books about France and set in France and that sort of thing. And Craig Carlson, who started the American Diner in Paris, it's a pancake restaurant in a diner in Paris. And so he has 2 great books out about his journey.
That's a phenomenal list. We're actually at the end of our time here, but I want to make sure that people can connect with you. And if you want to see more of me and Patricia chatting, come join us on Blue Sky Book Chat, where we are forever doing interviews like this and all kinds of fun things where we bring readers on the inside of our writing lives. We share a lot of really interesting things there. But if you want to connect specifically with Patricia, on Instagram, she's Patricia L. Sands. And then her website with all of her other social medias is patriciasandsauthor.com.
Love hearing from anybody, readers and writers. And, it's just great to make connections. I'm a huge Instagram fan. I've been taking photos since I was 6 years old. So I was given a Kodak Brownie camera for my 6th birthday.
And that's a perfect way for us to wrap up because, if you want to travel without traveling, Patricia's Instagram has beautiful photos of France. She keeps sharing, even though we're all stuck at home, she shares the most beautiful photos of all these places she's been. So definitely go follow her on Instagram. And Patricia, thank you for making time to talk with me today.
Oh, it was my pleasure.